Welcome to NavTalk Series 3. I'm Simon Prowse, your host. NavTalk is a podcast where we discuss a broad range of topics which will be inspirational and at times fun. NavTalk, brought to you by the Navwealth Financial Group, helping you reach your destination in life on purpose.
Welcome to Navwealth's podcast. My name is Laurie. I am an advisor associate here at Navwealth. And today I thought it would be great to share some information around aged care and how important it is to get some information or even some advice around the transition into an aged care facility. Today I will be interviewing Andrew Wem, our aged care specialist. So Andrew, how did you become passionate about over 55 and aged care facilities?
Look, I think it was about 7 years ago when my mother needed to, was selling the family home and looking at her options to go into either an over 55s style accommodation or go into aged care. And I just realised then how complicated it was. I had clients asking about aged care. And from there, I really just started to really look into the sector. And geez, it's complicated.
So we've mentioned two types of facilities already, in aged care and a retirement village or over 55s. What's the difference between?
Well, really, an over 55s is a facility that you can go to when you can look after yourself. You might need a little bit of help around the house, but realistically, it's somewhere that you go if you're a little bit lonely, but you don't need nursing care or anything like that. It's self-funded and it's not what I'd call a good investment, but it is a great place to go for a lifestyle before you need to go into care. Whereas an aged care facility is everything's covered for you. So you get all your meals, you get all your cleaning done, you get everything. Your accommodation cost covers everything. So, and it's also completely government guaranteed, so you don't have to pay for anything.
So as an aged care specialist, when do you think we should start thinking, planning, or doing anything related to aged care? Because from what I've seen, I know leaving it late can sometimes be a bit of an issue.
Oh, if you leave it to the last minute, or if you have a fall and the doctors say you can't go home and you've got to go into care, it is really difficult because, generally, the sooner you start looking for care, the better. Before your mental health fades, dementia, before your physical health deteriorates and you're unable to dress yourself and things like that, you really should start to have a look around and see what facilities are around.
So you mentioned having a fall, so they can just send you straight to an aged care facility. They won't then go home.
Yeah, if they deem that your house is unsafe for you, that there's insufficient care at home for you, they can not let you go home from the hospital and say you must go into care.
Wow, that'd be difficult. So it looks like planning ahead is really vital. How do you do that?
Well, really, I think it's all about then starting to get a feel for what it is that you're looking for, what kind of facility that you'd like. And at the end of the day, you've got to be assessed for aged care. You can't just say, I feel like I should go into aged care. You actually need to be assessed by an aged care assessment team or an ACAT team. And this process takes time. And then when you even find a facility, the waiting times and availability vary before you can get in there. So at the end of the day, the sooner you start planning, the less stress you'll have if something goes wrong.
So you touch on choosing a facility. How do you get in and try out a facility if you've got a buy-in, or how do you get to stay there?
Well, you can go into what's called respite care, where it's a little bit of a try before you buy. You get up to 6 weeks a year of respite care, where you could go to a facility and say, do you have any respite beds available? And if they do, once you've been assessed for care, they can take you in for up to 2 weeks at a time to try out the facility. So if you're looking for different places to go, you might try a couple of weeks in 3 different facilities till you find out what you really like in a facility.
And from what I know, respite, it's not only when you're injured, it's when, say, your carer at home needs a break. Is that right?
Correct, yeah. If you're looking after a loved one and you want to go on holiday and things like that, then you can certainly take them to a facility and drop them off there, so to speak, for a couple of weeks for respite for yourself. So it's a really handy way of giving yourself a break if you're the main carer for someone.
You mentioned that it takes a long while and there's a process to be assessed, and it sounds like it could take a while. How do you guide yourself through that process, or use that to help you do that process?
There's certainly some really good websites. The My Aged Care website that the government operates is a fantastic website and source of material. But in terms of saying that the process itself, you need to contact the aged care assessment team in your local area, and they will come out and assess your needs to see whether you do need to go into aged care or not. They will then research some providers of care, help you with all of that, and find a package that's suitable for you in terms of, are you high need if you have dementia or something like that? What care do you actually need? And then it's up to you to choose a provider and sign an agreement to say what care. So if you need high dementia care, then you might start looking at providers that have such care. And all of this from start to finish can take up to about 12 months. And in sometimes longer, depending on the facility that you're trying to get into.
That's a long way. I understand why planning is so important now, seeing as being assessed as needing care. Waiting up to 12 months to get into a facility does seem like a while. You've mentioned that you need to choose a provider or choose your favorite place. So where do you start? How do you select a suitable facility for yourself?
So on the My Aged Care website, you can certainly do a search of your local area to find facilities that are available to you. Make a short list of those facilities and go and visit them. Have a tour around a few of the facilities and see what you like, what sort of rooms they have, what sort of common areas there are the nurses, the sort of nurses that you like. It could be for religious reasons or different food types or different languages that are spoken in a facility that guides you to liking one facility over another. And then once you've worked out which ones you prefer, you can then get some quotes on fees and charges that they charge. And then it's time to come in and say, right, here's what I think I like. Can I afford this? How do I fund this? Now, I really need some advice to help me through this, please.
The part that I'm hung up on now is the fees and charges. So there's a lot that goes into this. Obviously, you think of aged care and you're going to be looked after 24/7. So you must think it's really expensive. Can you start breaking down the fees for me and the costs?
Yeah, look, there's 4 basic fees that you'll pay. Well, you may not pay all of them, but you'll certainly pay some of them. So the main fees is your accommodation payment, which is all published on the website for each facility. So it's not like they can just put up a fee for you as you walk in the door. They have to publish these rates and they're approved by the government. So there's a RAD which pays for your accommodation, and that could be a few $100,000 up to a couple of $1 million. So they can vary considerably depending on where you want to reside. There's then the costs of care, which is made up of 2 different fees, being the basic daily fee, which all residents pay, and that's a fee that's in line with the single-aged pension, and it's 85% of the single-age pension. And it'll go up every quarter. And then a means-tested care fee, so based on your assets, you'll pay a certain amount to help fund that care, but that has some caps on it at $33,000 per annum, and then a lifetime cap of just under $80,000. So the most you'll pay, no matter what your assets are, is $79,000 extra in fees over somebody that has really no assets at all. And then there's additional service fees, which is really for any luxuries, glasses of wine with meals and coffees and extra things along those lines. Could be foxtail and other things. So yes, 4 different types of fees that all come together to give you your monthly fee.
When we look at all this online, obviously the biggest one that jumps out is the RAP. That's huge number. Can you break that down for me? How does it ramble out? What is it?
So a RAD is a lump sum that you pay to go into a facility. And then if we had a RAD of $1 million, for instance, you could pay that $1 million up front, or you could pay none of it up front and pay just a daily accommodation payment, which is really the interest on that RAD. So at the moment, it's a bit over 8%, is the interest rate. So if you didn't pay the lump sum, you could pay the interest on that $1 million at 8% per annum. And they break that down to a daily payment. Or you could pay half of that lump sum and half of it as a daily accommodation payment. So the more money that you have, or the easier it is to access that money, you might decide to pay the RAD up front. Or if you decide to keep your home, you might be paying a daily accommodation payment because you don't have that cash to pay it all up front.
So parting with a lump sum that huge would be hard to comprehend for some people. Can you explain to them why paying for a RAD would be beneficial to them?
Well, the payment of the RAD actually hides that money for Centrelink. So whether you're getting Centrelink now or not, you might be eligible to get Centrelink as you move into an aged care facility. But that the deposit or the RAD that you pay actually buys you that right to live in the home. So it's really saying, here's my money. I've now bought this room for my stay while I'm here. It is guaranteed by the government and guaranteed to be refunded to you on death or leaving that facility. So it really does preserve one way of preserving assets for your estate, because it is government guaranteed.
I feel like I understand the rides a little bit better now that you've sat down and explained it to me. But there were other fees and costs that you brought up. So there was a basic daily care fee, and then there was also means tested care fees, and then there was also, did you call them luxury fees?
And extra service fees.
Right. Okay. So how expensive is the actual care you get?
Well, the actual cost of care is up to about $174,500 a year is what the government costs that care at. However, if we take out the payment of a RAD and we look at the actual cost of care, what you're actually asked to pay is somewhere between $22,000 and roughly $56,000 a year. And the government's paying the difference between that number and $174,500. So the government's actually heavily subsidising the cost of care. So I don't really think that it's all that expensive, depending on what we do with your assets.
All right. Well, $55,000 may be a lot to some people who are seeing. I know definitely for me it is. That cost a year is huge. How do you go about reducing that?
Well, really, planning in advance is definitely the best way to help reduce your costs, because aged care and aged pension calculations are so different. So what we try to do is we might be changing the asset ownership so it's not in your name. We might pay a larger RAD, so we use more of your assets to buy into the facility, which I said is like buying a home, so it's excluded from age pension calculations. So if we can get you some more age pension, then we can reduce your costs because we'll get the government to pay some of those costs for you.
So with all that, you've mentioned the age pension, which is Centrelink. How does that affect you when you're going into an aged care facility, whether you want to get it or you're scared you're going to lose it because you've sold your home? How does it work?
Well, that's probably one of the biggest things that I get asked is, geez, if I sell my home, though, won't I lose my Centrelink? Or if now my partner's passed away, I'm going to lose my Centrelink and my costs are going to go up. And they're all really valid questions. So our goal is to try to either get you the age pension if we can, or ensure that you don't lose it. And we can do that by helping you understand that paying a larger RAD may be a good thing to do, depending on your assets. Retaining your home might be another good thing because your home stays exempt from Centrelink for 2 years after you move out. And then there's other structured products that we can use that help reduce your assets that are accessible by Centrelink. So I think with Centrelink, it's very easy to get lost with Centrelink if you don't really know what you're doing. So seeking advice around Centrelink and aged care costs is really crucial to making sure that we get it all right.
Right. So with Centrelink, I know there's something called gifting rules. I know if you sell your house, you can't just give your money away. Can you explain how that works?
Yeah, so when I say using estate planning versus gifting to change your assets and change Centrelink, gifting, you can only gift $10,000 a year up to a maximum of $30,000 every 5 years. Whereas if you changed your will so as you didn't receive all the assets on your partner's debt, some of those assets got willed away from you, that bypasses the gifting rules. So by planning early when you're a member of a couple to make sure that you don't receive all your combined assets on the death of the partner, then we can really hopefully make sure we can reduce any aged care costs down the track.
Right. And doing that is tricky because you also need to know that you have enough assets to look after yourself, no?
Absolutely, which is why we do such detailed financial analysis of what you do need and what the actual costs will be. So until you know what those costs are likely to be, you've got no idea how much you would like to will away or gift away to leave you with sufficient assets so you don't run out of money on one hand and you don't pay or lose too much assets by going to aged care and having to pay a lot of costs.
Now I know what it costs. I know what types of fees there are. I know there's different rules for settling and everything around that. How do I proceed from here? What do I do?
So my tips are to have a look around. Once you've had a look around at all the facilities in your local area, decide which facility is your first choice, your second choice, and your third choice. Then if something goes wrong, you can always say, look, remember that place that we went to? You didn't mind this place. The next choice was this place, and the next place was this. So we can now do a plan around you going into your number one choice. And if the time comes, we've run it, we've done a plan, you've got the advice, you know what assets to sell, you know what you have to do. It's now just a case of saying, well, are there any beds available? Do I still need that level of care, or do I need to go to a different level of care? And what are the demands for the services in the area? So you might find that you now need some dementia care, and the first place that you went to didn't have dementia care. But at least you know that the next place that you're going to go to has some dementia care, so you know where you're going. It's just a case of waiting now through the waiting period that they might have till there's a bed available for you.
So getting a plan in place seems like the most important thing to do if you feel like you may need aged care at some point. So we've been through a lot so far, but you know what come to for help?
So that's where Navwealth can really help you understand how you can pay for this accommodation. What assets are you going to use? Should you pay the RAD up front? Should you pay a combination of RAD and DAP? Or should you borrow against your home with a reverse mortgage to put a loved one in there? What assets are you going to use to generate this cash flow to fund your care? And by understanding that and having a plan in place, we'll be able to help you understand, can you get some more Centrelink to help you? What costs are there going to be before you might have the cash to pay your RAD up front? It might take you 6 months to sell a home, but in the meantime, you're going to have to fund a DAP, a daily accommodation payment, which is very expensive. So what assets do we have to use? How do we fund that in the short term? And then over time, what does your asset look like if you're continuing to do this, depending on what option you decide to go with?
So obviously there's loads that goes into these plans, lots of figures, lots of numbers, fees, costs and everything. Do you have a brief version you could run me through, so then that way we can give people an example of how valuable the advice is?
Sure. But what I've put together here is really an example of some of the costs of care before advice. So in this example, Jane had gone into care a little bit earlier and had already paid some RAD, which is why the two RADs on the screen are slightly different. But their RADs are $911,000 each. And if they were to pay a daily accommodation payment on that RAD, it's $203 a day. And so if you'd rather pay $203 a day every day for your care, or pay $911,000 up front, they're your two options, or a combination in the middle. So they then have a daily care fee each of $60 odd. They have a means-tested care fee based on their other assets, including the cash for the RAD of $76 a day. And this particular facility had an additional service fee of $31 each a day. So for For John, his total care fees is $135,000 a year, and for Jane, it's $118,000 a year. So what we did for John and Jane was work out how we could use some structured products, how we could free up some cash to pay their RADs in full to see what we could reduce their care fees down to, and show them what their assets are worth over time. So in this next slide, we've got the outcome. And really, the biggest difference here is by paying that RAD in full, John's daily accommodation payment has gone down to $0 a day, as has Jane's. And you'll also see that the means tested care fee has come down to $71 each instead of $76 each. And the other fees, the basic daily care fee and the additional service fees, are the same. However, if we look at the totals here, John's total's gone from $371 a day down to $163. So we've saved John's $76,000 a year in cash flow payments, and Jane $58,000. So we've saved a total of $134,000 a year in payments for them.
So you basically put someone in the facility for free regarding cash flow.
Correct, because that was just about what it was going to cost John to go into care on his own.
Wow, that's a big saving. So obviously cash flow wise, it's vital getting some advice. Those are huge differences for a per annum value. How does that affect them in the long term?
Well, if we look at the graph that I have here, which really is just showing them how the cash flow, several models that I've optioned for them in terms of how to pay for this care. So over time, what we're trying to do is say, well, do we run out of cash, or can we still afford to pay for this accommodation with the cash that we have and the other assets that we have available? As you can see in this graph, there's very big differences in cash flow from the early start of the first couple of years through to the end. The difference at year 3, where the cash flow really ticks up, is because they've finished paying their yearly means tested fee. But over the long term, what are their assets actually worth compared to, with the different cash flows? So in this case, you can see here that 3 of the options were really very, very similar in their net worth, even though the cash flows are very different. But the option 4 in this case, their net worth is very, very low compared to the others, which is $100,000 difference in over 5 years. So seeking some advice to understand the differences in how to fund care can make a really significant difference to your net worth and your cash flow over the short term.
You showed us these graphs and they are quite drastically different. Can you basically just summarize for everyone what we've been through today so they can have a short to-do list on how to go about age 10?
Sure. Really plan ahead, start and think about, if we need aged care in the future, where do we want to go? And if you've got that in your mindset, you can start to put a plan together. The sooner you both go, or you go with your carers to have a look at some facilities and understand the facilities and have a plan in place, then if everybody's on the same page, if something happens to you or something happens to a loved one and they need to go to care, everybody knows what you're going to do. Everybody knows you can afford to go to this particular facility. Everybody knows that you like the facility that you're going to go to if you have to go to care, and you can afford it. You're going to have to sell the house, or you're going to have to rent the house, or in 2 years you're going to have to sell the house or take some money out of super or sell down some shares. You know what you're going to have to do at that time. Rather than panic, you can go up to that facility, put your name down on the waiting list, and go to respite while you bide your time for that waiting list, hopefully to get a bed in the facility that you prefer.
Well, thank you, Andrew, for coming in today and spreading the word about aged care. I know you've broken everything down for me, but in case anyone needs some aged care advice or an aged care specialist to listen to them, can you just explain how they can get in contact with you?
Sure. Look, just give Navwealth office a call on 9008 3000. Alternatively, send me an email. It's quite simple. It's just andrew@navwealth.com.au, or visit our website and have a look on there for some detailed information on aged care. But give me a call if need.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in, Andrew.
Thank you for listening to NavTalk. If you'd like to catch up on other episodes from this series or previous, head to our Navwealth website. Until next time.